Okay, we're going to look at exporting from photo, and we're going to look at the more traditional way of exporting via the File menu, and we're also going to look at photo's export persona. So to begin with then, I've got a typical document that I've been working up here, and to export this to a file format other than the native Affinity photo document, we can just go to File, Export. And along the top here, we have listed all the various formats that we can export to. So we'll stick with good old JPEG for now. And we have various presets which are unique to each different file format. And in addition to that, we can of course also resample the image. So for example, I could choose a smaller resolution for the exported file, and it also recalculates file size here. Now, before we go ahead and export, let's also touch on the More category down here. Now, some of these options, again, will be unique depending on the export format you've chosen up here. For example, JPEG, we can choose progressive encoding and also modify the quality scaler. We can also choose from this extended menu whether or not to embed an ICC color profile and also whether or not to embed metadata. So once we're done here, we can close that down, and then from there on it's just a simple case of clicking Export. And let's just call this Clovelly Coast Output and save it. Okay, and what's actually passed for export in this case will be whichever layers you have activated in the Layers panel. So because I have all of these shown, this final image will export. If I were to hide some of these layers, this is the result that would be exported instead. So the final export is visually based on what you're currently seeing on your canvas. So that covers a simple file export. Now let's look at the export persona. So I've come pre-prepared here, and what I've done here is mocked up a kind of presentational header, perhaps for a website or something like that. So I have a background image layer here, and then 3 images pasted into the document. And it's important to note that these images are actually full resolution. I have indeed scaled them down, but they're never resampled. They retain all of their original detail at their original resolution. Now this will be important, and you'll see why in a minute. So over on the export persona, which we can access here, we are presented with 2 key panels, layers and slices. So if I just come across to the slices panel here, this is always going to be populated with a slice called a background. So this is the entire document with all of the layers. So the final composite, if you will. So we can always export the final result on the canvas as if we were doing file export. But here's the thing, we can define custom slices, and we can either do this through individual layers or by click dragging onto the canvas. So I can click drag across here, then release the mouse to create a slice. And if I just click here to rename it, I can call it 3 images. And if I choose to export this slice here, that will export just the slice region that I've drawn. So with this in mind, let's just delete this slice and move across to the Layers panel. Now, if I shift-click to select all of these image layers and the background layer, I can then click Create Slice. And it will automatically create slices based off the layer size and information. So hopefully you can see where I'm beginning to go with this. You can mock up layouts or designs, but then export individual elements of that layout. So while we're here then, what we can also do is change the export format either for each individual slice, which we could do up here, or we could shift-click to select them all and once again set, say, a JPEG high-quality preset, and they will all change to export as JPEGs. So you'll notice I've just expanded one of these slices here. So it gets yet more complicated. We can also export multiple resolutions for each slice, and also export multiple image formats for each slice as well. So you see here, we've got the JPEG format. I could export a 2x Retina version of this particular slice. So again, when we're talking about UI and web design, you can see where this export persona would really begin to come in handy. Additionally, if I wanted, say, a higher quality PNG version of this slice, I could add another format here, and it's automatically set to PNG 24-bit. And once again, we could add another resolution. So it now generates on export 1x and 2x versions of this slice. So harking back to when I mentioned that these 3 image layers still retained their original resolution, hopefully you'll see why that's so useful when it comes to exporting higher resolution versions of what's actually on the document. So then we can just as easily remove custom export options by just clicking the X here. And once we've basically set all of our options, to export all of these in bulk, we can just click down here where it says Export Slices. Then we simply choose a directory to export into. So I'll create a new directory called Slices and click Export. Okay, and if we just move across to a Finder dialog here, we'll find the folder we just created. If we dive in there, we'll see all the files in their exported form. So I also chose to export the entire composition, but here are the individual image files and the background header file. So there we go. We've covered basic exporting through the File menu, and we've also taken a bit of a look at the power behind the export persona. Hopefully that was useful to you, and if you have any questions or queries, please don't hesitate to ask on the Affinity forums, and don't forget to check out the other video tutorials. Thank you for watching.